Absolutely.
Man, I tell you what, Steelers don't win in Philly. You do know that.
I do. In my notes here, it says they have not won in Philadelphia since 1965. Your Philadelphia Eagles, the undefeated Philadelphia Eagles. And this week we have the Battle of the Keystone State. Here to break it down with us today is Jim Wexell from Steel City Insider 247sports.com. Good morning, Jim. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Man, I tell you what, Steelers don't win in Philly. You do know that.
I do. In my notes here, it says they have not won in Philadelphia since 1965.
1965 with the great interim coach Mike Nixon. I have not looked up who the Hall of Fame quarterback was that year for the Steelers. Might have been Dick Shiner, might have been Kent Nix, maybe Bill Nelson. I'm not sure.
Was that at the historic Franklin Field?
I'm not sure. I was 5 years old. I missed that
one. Well, I know that the Eagles have owned Pittsburgh in Philadelphia, but, Pittsburgh has a big fan base as well. It's actually one of my favorite training camp tour stops. I haven't been out to Latrobe in about 5 or 6 years, but man, it is one of the all-time favorites, and it's going to be a good one regardless of the situation. I know the Steelers are 2-5 coming off that loss in Miami. And Jim, I don't know, have you been staying after practice with these DBs on the jugs machines? Because they are just dropping opportunity after opportunity. And Kenny Pickett is throwing interceptions by the bushels, it seems like.
The story of the interceptions, exactly. The Steelers have been drafting. You probably have a taste of this too. The Steelers have been drafting probably on the average of 24th every year for the last 18 years with Ben Roethlisberger. So you end up taking interior offensive linemen, safeties who can't catch, cornerbacks who can't run or step slow, but they're smart. Running backs, Najee Harris, who just don't have the Nick Chubb, all of that. And a lot of the interceptions were dropped and thrown, I think, because of their draft position. That's my excuse.
Well, we got to come up with some kind of reasonable explanation. Let's start off on the offense, though, because Matt Canada has been criticized, and I think by yourself included there on the 247 Sports site there. His play calling has been atrocious from my understanding. Now, I haven't seen all of the Pittsburgh games, but Mike Tomlin has come out, said he's not on the hot seat. I don't know. Mike Sullivan, he's a pretty good one. I remember his time with the New York Football Giants calling plays, and I think he's a wide receiver, a quarterback coach there in Pittsburgh. Is Matt Canada in trouble here?
Maybe at the end of the year, but I really would be shocked if the Steelers fired him in the middle of the year. And really, I've kind of not defended him, but I'm trying to understand what is so bad about the play calling. When I go through I rewatched the game the other day against Miami, and the mistakes weren't in the play calling. And the thing is, it's a rookie quarterback with a new line, rookie deep threat, second-year tight end, a second-year running back. It's young, man. And Pickett is from the University of Pittsburgh, where he played really well. And the stadium used to chant his name to get Tomlin to put him in. Well, they got their wish. Now they're not going to blame him. They're not going to blame him. He's thrown 7 interceptions in his 4 appearances, 1 appearance, 1 relief, 3 starts, 7 appearances, 2 TDs. The exact opposite 3 years ago for Mason Rudolph, 7 and 2 in his first 4 games, and he's being run out of town. They can't stand him. They hate all quarterbacks except Roethlisberger, who won his first 14, and Kenny Pickett from the University of Pittsburgh, whom they wanted to draft. They wanted to play. They got all their wishes, so it's someone else's fault, and it will be forever.
Well, Big Ben are some big shoes to fill, and
yeah.
I know Kenny Pickett, who's the Jersey Shore gunslinger, but nobody in the NFL knew that man better than the Steelers because Pitt Panthers and the Pitt Steelers share facilities. So they were more familiar with Kenny Pickett than any organization coming out of the draft. They obviously felt good about it. Right. Now, I look at the numbers, Trubisky, Pickett, they have almost identical stats, identical pass attempts, completions, yardage. Now, the turnovers is the big indicator, and that is the product of a rookie. Now, hey, Jim, I'm not watching every game. I've read some of your articles and articles of a few others. The play call, I saw Chase Claypool's comments after the game. He said, hey, it's difficult to get going when everything's going right. And the other criticism I hear is like, hey, you need 3rd and 7. Well, they're going to call a 4-yard out. Hey, it's 3rd and 6. They're going to throw a 5-yard dink and dunk. So it sounds like, hey, they're throwing these short passes that are coming up short on 3rd down plays. Chase Claypool was criticizing, hey, maybe they're going right too much. Any validity there?
I see so many other teams do the same thing, and their receivers run for the first down. And if you saw at the end of the game, Deontay Johnson had a run after catch for a first down. Chase Claypool the previous week had a couple of big run after catches. It's not all of that. And maybe some of it is coordination, but I don't know if it's that bad. And I'm not blaming Pickett, and I don't want Trubisky. I think the coach made the right move at the right time. Now you got to live with this guy. Don't be in and out. And I admire Tomlin for saying we're not blowing in the wind. Stick with your guy. He's a good, like you said, you've seen him from high school. He's a quality player. He's going to be a really good quarterback, in my opinion. He's just got to go through this. It's a grind. It's tough. It's not like they're rebuilding right now because he deserved this. He had a fantastic preseason, and then Trubisky couldn't get anything going. The one guy who deserves to be upset maybe is Mason Rudolph, but this town can't stand him because Ben didn't like him. And if Ben don't like you, you're done. Yeah, move on. This kid's from Pitt, and he can play, and it's a grind. It's going to be a process, and really there's nobody to blame except the process, and it takes a little time.
No, I agree, and I'm a firm believer. I think the Steelers will be better for this in the long run.
Yeah.
And I do give a lot of credit to Tomlin for coming out and saying, hey, I'm not going to sit here and send the wrong message to my team. I made a decision. I stand by it. The one thing I did see that was kind of a head scratcher was when he did resort to Pickett the first time that he came in relief of Trubisky. I think they had like 10 days to prepare for that matchup or that game. And Pickett didn't receive any of the first team snaps leading up to that point. So it seemed like, in hindsight, it seemed like a snap decision at the time, but he has stood to his guns. Did you care to comment on that at all?
Yeah. Trubisky was having a hard enough time grasping it himself, and he needed the reps. He needed all the reps. As far as 10 days, after that Thursday game, I don't know that you really have 10 days of practice. They try to give him a rest, and then you get a full week of practice. And I'm not positive that Pickett didn't get a first team rep, but it's not their way to do that. Trubisky really needed the work. He was trying to get Trubisky, rolling on, and he's not rebuilding. He's not going to say, let's give the rookie a couple reps for next year. Cam Hayward may not have a next year. He got to win today. And Trubisky, they thought, gave them the best chance. He needed the work. So, and when Pickett did come in relief, he played very well. It didn't look like a couple of reps would have helped or changed much. Yeah.
Fair enough. And I like, when he first came in, he was picking up first downs with his feet when needed.
Yeah.
And so, hey, we're talking to Jim Wexell, who does a great job, 24/7 Sports, Steel City Insider with us on the Football Playbook. Jim, let's talk some playmakers, because I don't know. I mean, on paper, if you look at the bank accounts, I guess Deontay Johnson is your de facto number one, but this George Pickens is staying the case for Rookie of the Year. You mentioned Chase Claypool. Oh, by the way, Pat Freiermuth, they got 3 or 4 receivers here that have about 300 plus receiving yards. Is there a true number one target that Darius Slay will be locked up on, or does every week account for a different kind of game plan?
Well, if they're smart, they'll lock up George Pickens. Each week he gets more. There's a rookie. There's another rookie. The people are criticizing Canada the most for not devising a game plan around George Pickens. Again, a rookie receiver. That's a tough job too. It takes a little time, but each week it's more and more. And some of the other teams that travel have a top corner that travel with. I think the Patriots have a guy. I forget his name. He traveled with Pickens, which kind of surprised me because Deontay Johnson, in theory, on paper, is the number one, and he's good. He has had some struggles, But man, Pickens is the guy you got to watch. He's the guy, and his role will increase each week.
Interesting. Okay, so he was a smashing success as a second-round pick. Looks like they found themselves a first-round talent.
Right.
Anytime you take a running back in the first round, however, it's going to come with some criticism. And if you don't produce, well, then people are really going to start to scratch their heads. Najee Harris was a first-round pick. And I was surprised, Jim, preparing for our interview today. I just went and looked and said, hey, what's Najee Harris doing? I mean, he's averaging 3.3 yards per carry. Now, I know the offensive line has been pretty bad, but 3.3 yards per carry for a first-round running back, is that a product of Najee Harris? Is that a product of the offensive line, a product of a little bit of both? I mean, what's going on with that?
Well, I defended the drafting of him because I don't care what the analytics say, running backs are very important. I know they don't last that long, and I know you can find them deeper in the draft, but you draft one in the first round, he better be Nick Chubb. This guy hasn't been Nick Chubb. So, yeah, now I'm critical of it because he hasn't been. I just defended the drafting of running back at the time. But you're right. The guy, now somebody else showed me Derrick Henry's first similar early portfolio, same kind of numbers. But, man, I don't know if he's Derrick Henry. He put on 12 pounds, and then he hurt his foot. He kept playing with the foot injury. That's why he's looked sluggish. Now, last week in practice, he looked really good. So I thought he was going to break out. And I think the team did too. They liked what they saw in practice. They gave him an increased workload. It was better. Now, you would think maybe next week will be even better. But, man, I can't blame it all on the offensive line because the undrafted rookie Jalen Warren has looked pretty good. And so, and the offensive line is new. But I tell you, they've got some big boys up front, and they open some holes. And Najee's missed a lot of holes. So I'm not putting it all on the offensive line. It's all got to come together. Pickett needs a running game, and the running game needs Pickett. And Pickens needs both of them. So I think it'll all come together at some point. It's a process. It's a grind.
Yeah, you mentioned Jalen Warren. That's a name that Eagles fans should get familiar with. He was a training camp media darling there and undrafted free agent. It sounds like he's kind of eaten into the third down role as a pass catcher, as a blocker, as just a third down back there in Pittsburgh. Is that the case now?
That's the case. He's become the third down back. Although Najee ran a 3rd and 1 and got stuffed. Jalen ran a 4th and 1 and gained 4. Jalen is primarily their third down back. I think they want to feed Najee more, but Jalen can really block. You don't usually get excited about great blocking, but I'm telling you, this guy really, really pops people, and you're like, yeah, that is cool. And he's a really good receiver too. And Najee's all of that too. But Jalen, man, as Tomlin likes to say, the stage hasn't been too big for him. He's just he gained 3,000 yards his high school senior season. I've never seen that. I've covered a lot of high school ball in my career here too. And I've never seen 3,000 yards. I said, how did you not get a scholarship? He goes, well, it was my line. Everybody thought it was all because of my line. And 4 of his offensive linemen in high school got D1 scholarships, Washington, Texas, Oregon, and another school. They're big timers. But now we find out after Jalen had to go to Snow Junior College in Utah and then transfer a couple other times, he's a player. And those 3,000 yards were his. So Jalen's a really cool kid. He's Willie Parker's cousin. And Willie Parker was an undrafted free agent.
Is that right?
Yeah.
How about that? Hey, yeah. Key Willie Parker.
He wishes he had Willie's speed, but he's got other things. He's pretty good.
Nice. Jim Wexell here, dropping some gems on us on the Football Playbook. We're so happy to have him. Let's shift some gears over to the defensive side, Jim. Terrell Austin, I see, is the defensive coordinator. Brian Flores was brought in as, I don't know what, an assistant head coach. I mean, who's calling the shots here on defense? Is it Austin? Is it Flores? Is it a tag team? What's going on there?
It's probably Tomlin. I'm sorry. I wish I could answer this. I felt it coming, and I'm like, oh boy, I don't really know the answer to this. Keith Butler was the DC last year, and he replaced Dick LeBeau. See, Tomlin came in as a defensive guy. He was a defensive coordinator of the Minnesota Vikings, got the job, And Dick LeBeau was a player favorite, a great DC. So he said, Dick, you do what you do. I'm not above this. I don't have an ego. I'm not shipping you out. You're too good. Well, after a few years, Dick, they realized that Dick was going to keep coaching until he was 95 if he could. So they go, we got to make plans. And Mike wanted to do his own defense.
Yeah.
So he promotes Keith Butler, and really, it was the Mike Tomlin looking over Keith Butler show. So now that he's moved Terrell Austin in there, you expect the same thing. But boom, here comes Brian Flores. It was a surprise hire. Mike didn't know he would be available. He is. And so now you've got 3 cooks in that kitchen. I don't know if it's too many, but it seemed to work the other night. And while I have always liked Terrell Austin. He's a Pitt kid. We've always watched him. He's a smart guy. And Mike is getting his stuff in. So Mike and Terrell have been working together since Terrell was the secondary coach. But there's a lot of respect for Brian Flores. And you see Flores working with the defensive line and the linebackers on specific blitz overloads, like LeBeau used to do, stuff we haven't seen since LeBeau was here. So you have to respect his input too. So it's a lot of cooks there. I'm sure they're working it out. But the defense is playing well. They shut Brady down. Apparently everybody's shutting Brady down now.
Yeah.
But 2 weeks ago, we were shocked because the Steelers secondary was obliterated with injury. Now they're back. And after that first tornado, they survived in Miami, the hurricane that hit them 3 drives right away, 13-0. They shut it down. They look good. There's a lot of good things going on with a defense that had a lot of question marks without TJ Watt.
Perfect leadway, but it's interesting for a 2-5 team. They've beaten up on Brady and Burrow, and then I know Flores must have been licking his chops against the Dolphins this past week. Now, I think what happened there is what happens to all these teams. You try to prepare and game plan for Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and you see that speed on the film, but experiencing it in person, I hear it takes every team about a quarter to adapt and adjust to the actual game speed. But you're right, the second half, scoreless.
Nothing, right. I know Miami passed on a field goal. They could have had a field goal. They went for it on 4th and 1 in field goal range. You mentioned Cincinnati. There was a little post Super Bowl hangover there. And, in Cincinnati, when they hang those runners up banners, it's a week-long party and a week-long party after. And TJ Watt was playing. So they hung their runner-up banner up and rocked and rolled, and Steelers came in and surprised them. So it was a great defensive effort, but I take that with a little grain of salt. Lately, though, they've been playing some really solid D, and then TJ will come back after the bye, I presume, and really they could be one of the top defenses in the NFL after the bye.
Yeah, I think that's the Saints game after the bye week, I believe. And, since TJ Watt has gone down, I know Alex Highsmith, I think, leads the league in sacks, but 3 of them came against the Bengals, I think, when TJ Watt was there. And Highsmith, friend of the show, watched him coming out of Charlotte. Doesn't do anything spectacular. He's just a high motor guy, full of energy, nonstop. He's going to pursue. And it's a byproduct. Like, he just winds up around the football. He's got a true natural knack and nose for the football. This guy just comes at you every single play with everything he's got.
I don't want to diminish Alex by any means by saying he's a great number 2 to TJ. And if you look back at the Steelers Super Bowl teams, when they have the bookends in that regard, Lamar Woodley, James Harrison, Joey Porter, and James Harrison, and Kevin Green and Greg Lloyd. Well, now it looks like Alex Highsmith gives them that killer duo over there. And the other guy, you mentioned Charlotte. The Pittsburgh Steelers have the other Charlotte guy, and he's playing really well lately inside, Larry Ogunjobi.
Yeah. He
and Cam Hayward are really they really frustrated Brady, and you saw some of it with Tua too at the goal line, shutting down some 3rd and 1s to push field goals. Ogunjobi and Hayward are a really nice inside tandem right now. So any other Charlotte guys you recommend to call the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I like that. Well, my guy Pete Rossamato from Long Island just got named the interim coach down there. So we'll be keeping an eye on Charlotte, Jim. Don't worry about that.
Okay.
Let me ask you about the linebacker duo of Devin Bush and Miles Jack in the middle, though, because these guys are fast, they're physical. They also show up around the football, and Montravius Adams up front is a big space eater, allows these guys to kind of plug the holes.
It's funny. Over the years, Mike came in with Casey Hampton as his nose tackle, and the second year, I'm not saying they didn't get along, but Mike punished him for being overweight, made him run laps, and put him on the pup. And ever since then, I mean, he's never drafted one of those big, girthy defensive tackles. I think he's what you might call a fattist. He just does not like heavy players. And Montravius Adams is a classic Tomlin nose tackle. He's more disruptive than a guy that's going to take up 340 pounds worth of linemen and plug the run. Montravius Adams was a nice addition. He's a disruptive pass rushing type defensive tackle, like Ogunjobi. And but your inside linebackers, your question, Devin Bush has been criticized in this town for a while now. And man, the last couple games, he's looked really good. So maybe it was the ACL he suffered. I can't even remember how long ago it was, but it seemed to derail his career. But wow, last week he looked really good. And the week before against Brady and those guys, he looked really good. So Devin, that's a good eye by you. Devin has looked really good. And Miles Jack, I mean, he came in here and he's given the Steelers everything that we all expected out of him. You remember him at UCLA, a great running back and linebacker in the same game. It was a classic. Everybody knew who Miles Jack was back then. But he's doing it. He's a quiet killer. He's a quiet, ferocious guy. He's got the speed. So he and Devin, yes, are forming a nice duo. And they play a lot of 3 inside linebacker packages with Robert Spillane. So I don't know if that helps your homework for this week.
No, and I'm a big fan of Miles Jack. He used to return the occasional punt on occasion as well that over there at UCLA.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so hey, we're educating each other. Let me ask you about the secondary, though, because I see the safeties look like an area of strength with Minkah Fitzpatrick, Terrell Edmonds, and then the cornerbacks, I don't know. I mean, nothing that is too scary that the Eagles should be concerned about. I'm sure you've heard about the Batmans and A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith and Quez Watkins and Dallas Goedert. I mean, how does the Cam Sutton, Le'Veon Wallace, Ahkello Witherspoon trio match up on these Eagles wideouts?
Wow. Brown was with the Titans, and what a beast. And they all know about him. I'm not sure about the other guys. I haven't really dug into your depth chart yet, but the Steelers corners are a step slow, but very smart. Levi Wallace played a lot with the Bills as a third guy. He was a walk-on at Alabama. Yep. He was undrafted. He came to the Steelers as a number 3, but geez, he plays a lot. He's one of those smart, long guys that lacks a step, and he's undrafted and walking on everywhere he goes, but all he does is play. So step slow. Cam Sutton, possible safety coming out of Tennessee, half a step slow, but really smart, can usually catch. I don't know what happened to all their hands last week, but he's another half step slow. So every week you go into this, and Terrell Edmonds, he can't catch either. Great athlete. He can't catch. Minkah can catch everything. Every opposing quarterback looks for him and goes the other way every time they step up to the line. Minkah's a ball player, and Minkah never walked on anywhere. He has all the requisite numbers and everything. He's high pedigree, big-time player. The rest of them, you go into a game like this and you say, geez, how are they going to cover him? How can they cover Tyreek Hill? They somehow managed, and so I assume they'll somehow manage against the Eagles, but man, it just on paper doesn't look like they should be able to cover him.
It's going to be interesting. And, Minkah Fitzpatrick, he is a difference maker back there. He's always lurking. I see he's got 40 tackles, 3 interceptions, got a bunch of pass breakups. So you definitely have to account for where he is on the field. And Jim, you've been ever so gracious to give us your time here. I just want to talk some special teams. I love special teams. And two things I want to hit on here. One, I saw a clip after the Bucs game of an old ball coach walking into the locker room saying, "Man, that shit's lit. That shit's lit." I said, "Who is this coach, Danny Smith?" And he's out here like hanging out like he's 20 years old, post-game celebration, just a ball of fire and energy. He's like my new favorite coach. I don't know much about him except when I saw him on the clip, I had to go find out who the heck is Danny Smith. And man, he's a football lifer.
You want to get Danny to return your phone call, just send him gum. He's full of gum, and yes, he's loud. And when he takes over the practice field for special teams, you know it. It's time, reporters never watch special teams practice. That's when we can go get our steps in, walk around the facility, get some walking in. But Danny's been here a while. He coached at Central Catholic, the local high school that turned out Dan Marino. So he's a Pittsburgh guy, and he went with the Washington Redskins for a long time. He's always the only one to ever defend Daniel Snyder whenever us writers get gossiping. He's all, Mr. Snyder was always nice about me. So anyway, Danny said that Gunnar Olszewski was the most fearless punt returner he's ever seen. And then Gunnar dropped 2 balls in games and he got benched. Steven Sims from Washington came in, an 89-yard return, got hurt. Gunnar came back. So we're not sure now Steven Sims is a viable. Hey, Gunnar used to be an All-Pro. He was 2019 the All-Pro returner, first-team All-Pro. So he's got it in there. And Steven Sims, though, deserves the job if he comes back from hamstring this week. So he was electric in preseason. He was electric in the one game he played. And I think Gunnar is also a time bomb waiting to go off. But there's a third guy who's due to be activated. If he's not activated by tomorrow, Calvin Austin, their 4th-round pick, will have to spend the rest of the year on IR. And he's a 4-3 guy, and he's a punt returner too. But I tell you, in practice, he's dropped one too many, and I don't know that he's going to get activated. But if he does, I would look for him to be in the slot, and maybe they'll game plan something in for his 4-3 speed because he's faster than anything they have. And so that could be a under-the-radar guy to keep an eye on if he's activated this week.
Good one. Yeah, he made a lot of plays down there for the Memphis Tigers. Last one for you. I've been this is my 21st year covering, the NFL draft specifically, Jim. And Christian Kuntz is one of my all-time favorites. He's a Duquesne guy. Coach Schmidt over at Duquesne, a good friend of mine. And I remember Kuntz coming out as a linebacker, all-pro first team in the NEC conference. Here's a guy that just has reinvented himself. He's gone and done all these spring leagues. He's changed positions. And I don't know. He's got to be in the league now. He's got to have his 5 years in the league by now. It's just amazing what this guy has overcome, the perseverance. And for those who don't know the story, he's just one of the, Philadelphia loves the story of an underdog. Christian Kuntz is the underdog.
And what a nice guy. You got to love those long snapper / linebackers because they make tackles, and you need that on punt coverage after you snap the ball. But you have to be a legitimate snapper. They just can't find a linebacker and teach them how to do it. They learned that with James Harrison in an emergency role back in 2008. He snapped one into the stands and lost to the Giants by 2 points. Christian is a legitimate snapper, a legitimate tackler. He's going to be here a long time. So that 5 years, I would assume, if he keeps himself healthy, like his predecessors all stayed here a long time, 10, 15 years. So it's exciting because he's a local. And he's, like you say, a great story.
Yeah, please tell him I said hello if you do get a chance to chat with him.
I will.
Tell the good listening audience at home where to find all your great content. Jim, what do you got on the docket this week?
For CBS Sports 24/7, I run a subscription site called Steel City Insider. And a couple years ago, I wrote Troy Polamalu's biography, which went over really well. But next week, I have a new book coming out called On the Clock, Pittsburgh Steelers, their story of the history of their drafts. And it's from Triumph Publishing. It's coming out next week. A lot of good stories about their drafts. They've had, Super Bowl drafts. And somebody asked me about what about the clunkers. Well, every team has clunkers, and I didn't go into too much of that, maybe one here and there, but there have been so many Hall of Famers drafted here and so many champions made from the draft, and Bill Nunn and Art Rooney Jr. and Dan Rooney, and just so many different stories. Tom Donahoe, Kevin Colbert passing on Tom Brady. I got that in there. Kevin Colbert passed on Tom Brady. He took T. Martin in the 5th round, the year Tom Brady was drafted in the 6th, and he knew. Kevin Colbert worked for the Lions for how many, 5 years? He scouted Michigan every freaking day, every week. And some guy told him, who was the interim coach at Michigan, one of those guys that went to work for the Lions after he was fired as a Michigan coach. I think Lloyd Carr's successor was fired. But Kevin said, what do you think? What do you think of Brady? He says, he's kind of gangly and he's strange looking, but all he does is win. And Kevin said, man, that sure hit home a few years ago when I remembered he said that. Kevin said, on my tombstone, it'll say I passed on Brady for T. Martin.
All 31 others did too, 5 times to be exact. And
but Rick, not all of them were drafting a quarterback in the 5th round and lived in Michigan for 10 years and scouted Brady.
That hurts. The allure of the national championship. T. Martin did something Peyton Manning could never do.
That was it.
Tennessee.
That was it. And, T has gone on to some successful coaching, smart guy. He put it all together. Yeah. Okay, let's take a shot with him. Yeah.
Well, Jim, I'd love to have you back on once the book comes out, because that's definitely right up my alley. It piques my interest. And the Steelers have had some of the greatest, maybe the greatest all-time drafts, especially going back to the 70s. And Bill Nunn, I'm sure you have some great stories on Bill Nunn in there. So maybe we can do this again. Where can they order the book if they want to get an advanced copy?
Well, I believe it's available on Amazon now. I know pre-orders were available, and it hasn't come out yet. There's going to be a review by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Bob Labriola, the team historian, is going to review it. And so I'm holding my breath, hoping it's a good review. And then that will go on sale. He'll link to the sale, and then it's on. So I'll get you a copy. Make sure I get your address.
Awesome.
Get you a copy. And I'd love to do this show again, Rick.
Can't wait to dig into it, Jim. Thank you so much for the time, and make sure you go follow him at Jim Wexell. Of course, Steel City Insider, 24/7 Sports, CBS. Thanks so much, Jim.
All right, Rick. Take care.
All right.